Yeah, very warm evening, everyone. It's amazing to see again, once more, the Citizen Corner full of people in real life. The building might feel a little bit cold, since we haven't been able to activate the heater. Nevertheless, the full community of the Citizen Corner is super delighted to see you here tonight. A grateful welcome to all contributing members this evening. Xavier mentioned a couple already. We have Julien, we have Seppe, Itzel, Marc, Tracy, Sylvia, Mohamed and Esther, making this community a very warm place to come. Now, for tonight, do not hesitate those people to ask for help, for masks, for hand sanitizers, for anything, and questions about the building are welcome as well. There will be warm winter soup to fight the winter blues and hot ginger lemon tea to fight viruses. But I've heard cold beer might help as well against the viruses, so they're all available at the bar, and all the money raised tonight will go immediately into the building, into this community place. A very warm welcome to all people living in the neighborhood, to the people from other communes. I've seen a couple, people coming from other communes, coming to Schaerbeek, to the people coming from places east, west, north, and even south of Brussels. Thank you for coming here. By train, on foot, by bike, monowheel, scooter, spaceship, or a computer screen. And even by car, a special thank you to my sister to bringing the sound system and her guitar. A very welcome aan alle Nederlandstaligen hier vanavond. Van jullie verwachten we immers dat jullie Engels of Frans moeiteloos verstaan. Un accueil très chaleureux à tous les francophones. Notre merveilleuse membre de la communauté et traductrice Lilou, là-bas, assurera la traduction pour vous. And of course, a very warm welcome to all English-speaking people today and all other languages represented here. We embrace in Brussels a multilingual population, a diverse city, and we value the diversity of perspectives, all this can bring us. Do not hesitate to ask if you want something to be repeated or if you need things to slow down a bit. We are here together and wish to include everyone in this experience tonight, making it as accessible as possible to join. There will be some interactive exercises tonight. Don't hesitate to choose whatever language you feel to speak during those exercises, right? But tonight, we especially welcome everything and everyone that makes us dream and imagine a better future for our cities. And I must say that this neighborhood is not bad at it at all. We've been dancing in the streets. We've organized 2 summers in a row now, amazing play streets. We've built street garden projects, citizen gardens, citizen buy gardens. The boomplanters came to make a parklet. We did open air chess contests at Bienfaiteur. And we've been experimenting a lot with making space for people. And the Citizen Corner, as a commons project, is a new experiment in this series. We have opened up this place for people, hoping that you would come and claim this space, organize something that you've always been dreaming of. Experimenting, connecting with people and dreaming together. And in just a few months, this space has become a vibrant place, a meeting point, and we cannot wait to welcome more neighbors to take initiative here. It is therefore an absolute honor to be able to welcome Rob Hopkins in real life in our neighborhood as expert imaginator. A very warm welcome to you here tonight, Rob. I have one more paragraph as an intro. So tonight we bring 2 different messages together from 2 very different worlds at first sight. Worlds that might not know a lot about each other, but have very similar dreams. The message of solar punk, and I'm going to read it to you here. Solar punk, lush green communities with rooftop gardens, floating villages, transport fueled by clean energy and hope-filled sci-fi tales. Imagine a world in which existing technologies are deployed for the greater good of both people and the planet. It's a description of solar punk, but it might as well have come just right out of Rob's book, What If? So the message of Rob Hopkins, unleashing the power of imagination to create the future that we want. What can those two worlds learn from each other? How can they empower each other in working towards a livable future? How can they inspire each other and us? How can they make us dream big, think outside of laws and boundaries, and reimagine the world that we live in today? For us, the link between Rob and the world he describes in his amazing book, What If, and the solar punk world is very, very obvious. And we hope that tonight, with this evening, you will agree with us afterwards. And feel inspired to create, dream, and spend nice evenings imagining and playing together. Let's start tonight, here in the Citizen Corner, learning from the best imaginators I know, Rob Hopkins and Xavier Damman. And of course, all of you. Voilà, so I invite you to a very nice evening and hope it will inspire you for the future. And I give the word to Rob now.
Lovely to see you all. I just experienced the joys of trying to travel across Brussels using Google Maps, which, so I'm very grateful to Julien for coming and saving me. Much appreciated. So this evening is going to be a little bit participatory. You're not just going to listen to me, I'm going to give you some things to do. And in order for that work, I need to teach you one little piece of transition technology, which is very important, which is that if you see me put my hand up in the air, you put your hand up in the air too, and you stop talking. Okay, so that's very good. And also, I'd love it if you could find a partner who you didn't know before you came here this evening. So we might need to just spend a minute just for the room to rearrange itself. Find a partner that you didn't know before you came here this evening. Okay, thank you. So you may wonder why we start like that. So I do that. I've given talks like this for a long time now, and I always start like this. Firstly, because this is a talk about community and connection, and we are living in an age of loneliness. And so it's good to leave tonight knowing at least one person you didn't know when you came here. And as I say, I've done this for many years, and so far I've now had 5 couples who've come to me and said, do you remember that thing you do in your talk? That's how we met. And there's been 1 baby. So be careful, that's all I'm saying. So your exercises, I'm going to show you an object. And with your partner, you're going to have 2 minutes to think of as many alternative uses for that object as possible, okay? They don't have to be sensible. They don't have to be something you could patent. They don't have to be something that's even feasible. But just think of as many different alternative uses as you can. You don't have to write them down, but keep account of how many ideas you come up with, okay? Is that all clear? Make sense? In 2 minutes? Okay, so your object is my shoe. Okay, so you have 2 minutes. As many different things as we could do with my shoe as possible. Go. Okay, so, thank you. So, Could you put your hand up if you thought of more than 5 ideas? If you thought of more than 10 ideas? More than 15 ideas? Wow. More than 20 ideas? God, they're on fire over here. 25 ideas? Good God. Okay. Was there any idea that you came up with that you thought, that was so brilliant that I really hope we get to share that with everybody else? That was genius, the world needs to hear. Yes?
You can throw it to a window to ask the attention of a new lover.
How romantic. Thank you. Yes?
I thought it's good when you want to throw at a president that you don't like.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them gathered in Scotland right now who all deserve shoes thrown at them, I think.
About the mother-son relationship, so when the mother's angry, she just throws but we skip that one.
Okay. So far, there's a big sort of very strong throwing theme going on here. Yes? No, really? Any more? One more over there. A flower pot. Thank you. A richer cup. Okay. Okay, well thank you for doing that. And so I always like to start with that because it's just good to... Oh yes, sorry, over here. A house for a mouse. Thank you, that's my favourite so far. Beautiful, yeah, so that's an exercise in what's called divergent thinking, where you're thinking about sort of unusual uses for things, and we'll come back to that shortly. So I came here from Glasgow. I was in Glasgow for the first week of COP, which was quite an extraordinary experience. And on last Friday, I was waiting by the road in the centre of Glasgow. And it's often said that just before a tsunami arrives, everything goes incredibly quiet. And then a tsunami doesn't arrive like a big wave like this, it arrives like a wall of water with an incredible sort of energy to it. And then the youth strike arrived. Oh, what happened? Oh, so then the youth strike, it was the Fridays for a Future youth strike in Glasgow. And it was absolutely extraordinary. And it just went on and on and on and on with colour and energy and purpose, and it was absolutely thrilling. And it had that sense of extraordinary kind of momentum to it. And so when people would say, when I was in Glasgow, so do you feel optimistic or do you feel pessimistic? And I said, that's the wrong question. The question is, do you feel determined? And actually, watching that strike go past made me feel extraordinarily determined, and that there's such a lot of love and care outside those talks. Whether it's inside, we will find out very soon. And this was sort of seemed to be the sense in the city that actually what was happening in those talks was really not what needs to happen. So I want to start, I guess, with just a little bit of what Extinction Rebellion called Tell the Truth, in terms of where we are right now, in terms of climate change. And we are in a climate and ecological emergency, which is accelerating, and where we have to not look at this idea of net zero. All the governments in Glasgow are talking about net zero by 2050. Net zero is an absolute catastrophe. And there are two problems with net zero by 2050. The first is net zero, and the second is 2015. Because net zero basically says, someone's going to invent a machine that's going to suck all the carbon out of the atmosphere and make it okay. So we don't need to change very much because this magic thing is coming. It'll all be fine. And 2050 is like later, mañana. There's no urgency to 2050. 2050, if you got a job and on your first day they told you that the fire safety policy in that office was, if you smell smoke, stay at your desk and ring the fire brigade next week, you would think that maybe they hadn't quite appreciated the urgency of the situation. And it's exactly the same. So the reality of what climate change means for here is that at the moment, I think the average carbon footprint in Belgium is probably about 8.5 tons per person. By 2030, that needs to be 2.5 tons. And by 2050, it needs to be 0.8 tons. So this is a huge, huge shift that has to happen. And, you know, and we've already seen this is something that's already happening here in Belgium. It's not something that is somehow happened somewhere else. This is happening now everywhere in the world. And we can't sort of pretend anymore and push this away to one side. So the way I like to think about where we are now, right, is, and this is, don't think of this as a graph, because it's far too late in the evening for graphs, frankly. No one needs a graph at this time on a Friday evening. But if you imagine this is a mountain, and in the last 150, 200 years in the global north, we have been climbing this mountain. And here we are in 2021 standing on top of this mountain. And underneath our feet is more debt, more plastic, more carbon, more inequality, more anxiety than we've ever stood on top of before. And the views for some people are extraordinary from the top of this mountain, certainly not for everybody. And the guides who are at our side, who know this mountain, are pointing to the very dark storm clouds moving very quickly, and they're saying, we need to get down off this mountain. We really need to get down off here really quickly. And for some of us, that's enough, right? They're the guides, they're the experts. They know this mountain better than us. Maybe we should get down off this mountain. For a lot of people, that doesn't seem to be working. So my suggestion, my offering, is that maybe we would be more skillful to tell the stories about this place, to tell the stories of these lower valleys down here, and of the delicious food and wine that waits for us there, of the really comfortable mattresses that wait for us there, the warm welcome, the dry socks that are waiting for us once we manage to get down here. Because if just convincing people with logical arguments was going to work, we would have stopped in the 1980s and it would have been so much easier. So cultivating longing for a low-carbon future feels so skillful to me. And that's the work of imagination, it's the work of play, it's the work of art, it's the work of storytelling, it's the work of poetry. I saw very little of that inside the talks in Glasgow. Because if the kind of change, if that move from 8.5 tons to 2.5 tons to 0.8 tons feels like we are being torn away from something completely irreplaceable, like a child who's had too much sugar at a birthday party and doesn't want to come home, then we'll never do it. But if it feels like we are longing for something that's so delicious and extraordinary and exquisite, we have a new North Star in our life, then maybe we'll do it. So that's what I want to talk to you about today, and why imagination is so important. And the thing with imagination is that our imagination, which I think of as the ability to see things as if they could be otherwise, that ability to be imaginative is declining. This was some research published in 2011, which said that our IQ and our imagination rose together until the mid-90s, and then IQ continued rising, and imagination started to decline, and has been declining ever since. So I worry that we are facing this time that demands that we reimagine everything with our imagination muscle, which should be like that, and is actually like this. Because we've created a kind of perfect storm of conditions that are really damaging to the human imagination. As Mariame Kaba, who's an incredible prison abolition campaigner in the US, puts it, we live in a system that has been locked into a false sense of inevitability. Where are the people in the government today who are imagining Brussels with no cars at all? Where are the people who are imagining a city that's full of urban food, and so on and so on? If you can't build something if you don't imagine it first. And I worry that as a civilization, we might end up with this as our epitaph. Really? It wasn't that hard. You had to imagine a way to create a society in which people lived delicious, nourishing, connected lives, happy lives that used a fraction of the fossil fuels we used in 2021? Really? Was that so hard? Doesn't seem so hard to me. And so that would be such a stupid way to go, I think. Okay, so we're going to do another little exercise now, which is, you're very lucky because I have brought with me tonight, here in my bag, my time machine from the UK, which I built during lockdown with some plans that I found online. And so the first thing I need to teach you is what a time machine sounds like. This is a really important thing that I'm sure you were wondering. What does a time machine sound like? So a time machine sounds like this, but with you all joining in as well, okay? That's rubbish. That's not going to travel you through time. It needs to be a lot louder than that. Try again. Beautiful, that's much better. Good. Okay, so when we turn it on, that's what it sounds like. So the invitation is going to be that we're going to travel to 2030, not a 2030 that's utopia or paradise, but that's the result of us doing everything we possibly could have done during these 9 years. What would this part of Brussels be like in 9 years' time if everything that could have been done was done? Okay? And so when we turn it on, we'll just close our eyes. If you make yourself comfortable and close your eyes, and then when I turn it on, we're just going to take a couple of minutes just sitting in silence. And in your imagination, just take a walk out from the front door here and take a walk around the neighbourhood. What does it smell like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? How is it different from the world that you left behind? Okay? So we will go to 2030, and I will call you back in a couple of minutes. Okay, let's turn on our time machine. Thank you. I'm just going to ask you to turn to your partner, and we'll just take a couple of minutes just to share with them any reflections. What did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? Good, fantastic, thank you. Would anybody like to share anything, any impression, anything that was your part of that experience that you'd like to share? Yeah.
Using horses again to carry stuff around in the city. Heavy things.
Thank you. Yes.
People got back their personal power to influence the wheel of reality.
Thank you. Yeah.
You use the traffic transportation not only to the people but also for merchandises, and therefore there's no more cars on the streets. So in front of the houses there can be gardens where people gather, where you teach children education, nature, and it's more livable.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
It smelled like I was in the forest, so there was a lot of trees, unusual trees. And I could also hear the birds again in my first lockdown.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes.
We won't have the citizen corner most likely in 9 years anymore, but some other place where we can continue having a citizen corner like we are now.
Fantastic. Citizen Corner 3.0, maybe. One more?
Yes. After 1 minute and a half of also greenery in my mind, I felt like I saw also dark clouds arrive on this other level they came from Hungary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much for doing that exercise. And I've done that with 10 people in a workshop, and I've done it with 1,500 people in a hall. And for me, it's always very, very similar. It often starts with bird song and air and trees. And I've never done it and someone said, we've got this amazing IKEA that's 4 times bigger than the one we used to have. Or I've got a 10G phone, it's fantastic. And for me, there's something really important about in terms of cultivating longing, about allowing ourselves to imagine a different kind of a future. So this is a guy called James Mackay, who's an artist who draws the future. This is his idea of what might our cities look like if they became the most biodiverse places they could possibly be. What would it be like? Yeah. Luc Schutten. Yeah, I will talk about Luc Schutten shortly. I went to visit him. This is, as we take more and more cars out of our streets, what do we do with that space? We need to do something with all that space. In Los Angeles, 2/3 of the surface area of Los Angeles is dedicated to cars. What could we do with that space in the world beyond cars? Already in Paris, because of the rise in cycling, they're turning some of the underground car parks into places that grow mushrooms and grow salads and things like this. Actually, taking the cars out represents an enormous opportunity. And yeah, I went to visit Luc Schutten last time I was in Brussels, and do you all know who Luc Schutten is? I'm talking about? He's this artist who draws these fantastical pictures of 2100, so further forward than this. But when I went to his house, I said, how do you manage to remain so imaginative in the world that we live in today? And he took me into his garden, And in his garden he had a really big tree with a chair hanging off the chair. Do you know the story? So he had this chair, and he said, I sit in this chair and I meditate, and I put this device on my head. And when this device detects my brain waves are changing, it lifts the chair to the top of the tree, and then I look out across Brussels through the leaves of the tree, and that's where I get my ideas from. Oh, it's so cool. Not very practical for everybody if you live in an apartment or something, but anyway, it was very cool. This was some pictures that that Greenpeace made for COP26, postcards from postcards from 2050. This is their idea of what Barcelona might look like by then, what Madrid might look like by then. And you might be thinking, well, that's all a bit of a fantasy, that's not going to happen. This is in Barcelona, where this is already happening. So a few months ago, the municipality said they were going to close 30% of all the streets in the city, and they're going to turn those streets into forests, and places for play, and places for community. This is the cutting edge now of urban planning and urban design, of moving beyond the car, making and reimagining those spaces completely. The problem that we have is often, if we walk down a street in a city, this is Fleet Street in London, it's very hard to imagine that street as being anything other than this. It's like, how do we think beyond this? So this is a little animation that some friends of mine made, which I really rather love. So once you see Fleet Street like that, it's hard to unsee that. And when I look at that now, I think, wow, so if Fleet Street looked like that, what do all the other streets look like? What's mental health like in that city? What work are people doing in that city? How loud is the birdsong in that city? So, but as I said, you have to be able to imagine it before you can build it. This is in Amsterdam. This is a street in Amsterdam in 2016, and this is that same street today. And I first saw this on Twitter as a little GIF that went backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, so I'm going to replicate that same experience for you. It's good, isn't it? So the question I always have is, when it looked like that, what were the conversations people had with their neighbours? What were the dreams people shared with each other? How did people figure out how to work together? What were the what-if questions that people asked each other that meant that it was able to end up looking like that? Because that's the question we need to be looking at, I think. We talk a lot about dystopias, and every film we go to see is a dystopia. We talk about utopias a bit less, but we sometimes talk about utopias. I think what we need is what people sometimes call through-topias, which are the stories that start now and talk about how people in a neighbourhood like this were able to make that change happen in that time. Those are the stories that we really desperately, desperately need right now. And so pictures like that, I think, really help. So I want to just share a little film with you. So I do a podcast called From What If to What Next. And in every episode of the podcast, I start by asking my guests to do that time machine exercise, and then to describe to me the 2030 that they dreamed. And then I cut some of my favourite bits of that together, and I work with some animators who animated them. So it's about 3 minutes long, and I hope you enjoy it, and it has French subtitles, so you can have a 3-minute break, and I really hope you like it.
We're going to be using re in our language. We're going to be rebuilding, refurbishing, remaking, reusing, recreating, reinventing. The re is going to be a big part of our language.
Police and prisons and the armed forces were massively defunded, and that money has gone into robust preventative health care and well-being programs that also contribute to a rich imagination.
Financial insecurity has been eradicated. People no longer go to work because they have no choice.
And so all these workspaces that used to be occupied by big banks are now, of course, being redirected and used for creative spaces of all sorts, whether it's technical or artistry.
If you see girlfriends meet each other, they won't say, oh, you got this new dress, but they will say, oh, you got the same dress that you wore last week, but now you've made a little change about it. And that's so fancy and that's so fashionable.
The city really changed since the Ministry of Imagination was born. The city has become a huge laboratory in which everyone can participate.
You can hear laughter, not just the laughter of children, but the laughter of adults.
The place is alive with activity. There's people everywhere doing things.
People can walk freely in their bodies, regardless of their shape, their size, their abilities, their gender expressions, the color of their skin, their age, and there's an embrace of that.
We care about the things that we have. We cherish them, we repair them, we make sure that they will last for a very long time.
Faces are beautifully lined, full of the marks of laughter and a life well lived. It smells like growing things.
The air is filled with birdsong again, and London looks more like a rich parkland or forest.
All of the city's children, whatever their social condition, can have access to quality food.
We have cities and towns with clean air, which we can smell, and smell the flowers and smell the trees. We hear the birds, we swim in the clean water in our lakes and our rivers.
We have a diversity in habitats of wildflowers and scrub and brambles and blackthorn.
Thyme and lavender, can smell ripening fruit, the cherry tree, this vibrant explosion of colours and smell and of people.
All that tameness is suddenly dispensed of as being so last year.
Access to nature has been recognized as a human right.
You might be thinking, well, that's very nice, Rob, but actually in the real world, that sort of thing just doesn't happen. Well, one of the things that in work that I do is I get to go and visit a lot of places where this kind of stuff is already happening. So this is in a town about half an hour from Nice called Hopkins. I can never quite say it properly. My English mouth doesn't quite make the shape. But it's about half an hour inland. And in about a few years ago, the French government said 20% of all the food served in schools should be organic. And in Hopkins they said, well, if 20% is better than 0%, why would we just stop at 20%? Surely we should go all the way to 100%. So the municipality bought this land on the edge of the town, and they turned it into a garden where they grew 70% of all the food for the schools in the town. They changed the way the food was done, so it was made with fresh produce. The children came out to the school. They were involved in cooking in the school as well. It changed the whole food culture. What they found was that 60% of families who before this happened had never bought any organic food started to. That people's habits began to change. The food culture started to change because the school had taken such a bold, kind of clear step. So this, when I look at this, it always seems to me like it's a win-win-win-win-win solution to climate change. It's good for people, for mental health, for biodiversity, for the local economy. So many of the solutions, when we bring imagination and new thinking, are like that. So the thing that I want to share with you this evening is something we call the imagination sundial, and I apologise because I do have a French language version of this, and I had such a busy day I forgot to put it in here. But anyway, I will explain the different elements to you. So this comes from a question of If we are living in a time of imaginative poverty, at the very time in history when we have to reimagine everything, because our survival depends on our ability to do that, then how do we do that? Where do we start? What does that look like? So I want to just go through each of these and tell you some stories. Because the first one is space. You will know in your own lives the times when you are at your most imaginative are when you have some space and some time. Not when you're really stressed with a deadline of something to finish that night. Albert Einstein always said his best ideas came when he rode his bicycle in the forest. And that kind of daydreaming thinking space is really disappearing out of most people's lives very quickly. Even when we have it, we tend to reach instead for the very addictive devices that we carry around in our pockets, which eat that kind of space. How many great ideas that we could have had, how many great projects we could have dreamt of are lost because instead we reach for Facebook, we reach for Instagram. That time kind of disappears. And that kind of space is something that really is best done together with other people. This is in my town just before COVID, a big gathering of people, a big kind of community what-if space, a really well-facilitated imagining space. These things are really important because if we don't make them, they just never happen. And to bring people together to imagine what we could do is really important. And this is a story that I came across recently, which I love. So in about 1964, America and Russia are competing to put the first man on the moon. In Zambia, which had just become an independent nation from British colonial rule, a man called Edward Nkoko Mukuka Nkoloso announced that Zambia was going to have a space program. And the first person on the moon was going to be a Zambian. And the first flag on the moon was going to be the Zambian flag. And actually, his moon mission, I love this, rocket a bit wobbly. And he had this whole idea where he was training a group of people. This was how he trained people for weightlessness in space, by rolling them down the hill in a barrel. He also announced that they were also going to go to Mars, and they were going to go to Mars with a young woman, with a 17-year-old girl and a missionary and some cats. The idea of the cats was that when they would arrive on Mars, they could put them outside the rocket to see if you could breathe the air or not. Anyway, the whole thing, unsurprisingly, didn't really work. And at the time, he was derided as being a complete lunatic and a mad person. Actually, now he's seen as being a really great hero in the story of Zambia, because he made the space within that culture to dream that, yeah, maybe the first person on the moon could be from here, actually. And now in the whole world of kind of Afrofuturism, he's seen as a real hero. And he died a few years ago and was given the highest honour that Zambian government can give to people. So creating space, even if it seems crazy, for imagining new ideas in a culture is really important. It's the work of artists and playful people. The second one is place. And what I mean by place is a place that you go to, where afterwards, when you go home, you look at the place that you've come from in a very different way. And I'm sure you've all had places like that you've visited, amazing gardens or ecological permaculture projects or whatever, that when you come home, you can see the possibilities in different ways. This is Waterloo Bridge in London in April 2019, when Extinction Rebellion closed that bridge at both ends for 2 weeks. Normally this bridge is just traffic, backwards and forwards. For 2 weeks they turned it into a forest. They put trees all down the middle of the bridge. And I know a lot about it because my wife was there for the whole 2 weeks. She's very involved in Extinction Rebellion. She's been arrested 5 times already. I'm very proud of her. She's much braver than me. And she would talk about how people would stop on the bridge. People who walked across this bridge every day would stop and say, why can't it always be like this? how much better life would be if it was like this. And we can use places in 2021 to give people a taste of what that 2030 could be like. And we can do, I like to think of it as being like kind of pop-up tomorrows. How do we create pop-up tomorrows that give people a taste of a very different kind of a future? This is another way of doing it, which I've seen some of in Brussels, actually. This was an idea that I think started in San Francisco called Parking Day, with a group of artists who couldn't find any affordable exhibition space. And then one of them said, well, if you buy a ticket for a car, if you buy a car parking ticket, is there a rule that says you have to put a car in it? I mean, actually, if you buy a ticket for a car parking space and you put your bed in it and went to sleep all day, that would be all right as well, wouldn't it? You could do anything in it. So they started to look at car parking spaces as being low-cost rental exhibition spaces. And then they would just turn up and buy a bunch of tickets and turn them into gardens or little cafes or little libraries or little yoga studios. And again, it's that idea of a pop-up tomorrow. You take a space people know really well and you change it so that it gives people a different way of looking at the future. And often in climate change, we talk about this idea of positive feedbacks, which aren't very positive, where one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing. So the ice melts, so there's more dark sea. The dark sea gets warmer, so more ice melts, so there's more dark water, and you get these cycles like this. And I think it's really important to remember that the same thing can happen with transition projects. This is a transition group who started a community garden. It was going really, really well, and then their local council said, look, there's this piece of land here, it's about a hectare, it's covered in weeds, could you do anything with that? So they said, okay, and they went and they cleared the weeds, and they made it into a food forest. That was really successful. So then the municipality said, would you like this? It's 3.5 hectares, could you do something with that? So they did a big consultation. They asked all the local people. They advertised it in the high street. They asked people what they wanted to happen there. They designed it. They got an artist to create to help people imagine it. And then when they'd finished this, the municipality said there's a 13-hectare strip around the side of the town. Would you like to make a green corridor around the town? So now they're working on that. So I think in 10 years' time, what will they have done in 10 years' time? And when you start a project, you have no idea of knowing, no way of knowing what it will lead to and what will emerge from that. So place is really important. The third one is practices. And so this is a part of your brain that's really important, called the hippocampus. The hippocampus is where your memory and your imagination both fire from. So it's really, really important. And the thing that's fascinating about the hippocampus is that when we are stressed or in trauma or very anxious, and there's a lot of cortisol in our system, the hippocampus shrinks by up to 20%. And when that happens, we lose the ability to see the future in hopeful and positive ways, and we just get stuck in the present and stuck in the past. So there are ways in which imagination is a function of privilege. If your basic needs for food and shelter and safety aren't met, if you experience economic exclusion, systemic racism, it's very hard to really live a very imaginative life. So there are ways in which imagination is a kind of a function of privilege. And so I really wanted to try and find a place that was setting out to try and grow the hippocampus back again, to re-expand the hippocampus, to create a sort of campus for the hippocampus, if you like. And I went to a place in Dundee in Scotland called Art Angel. And in Art Angel, they're based on the first floor of an office block in the centre of the city. They work with people with mental health problems, with burnout, with anxiety. And they say, when you come here, you're not a patient, you're not a client, you're an artist who is preparing work for an exhibition. And every year in the main gallery in Dundee, they put on an exhibition. And this is Rosalie who manages that project. And it's just amazing. And everybody was really happy to tell me their story about how the time at Archangel had started to give them back, that they could see the future again. They'd lost any way of thinking about the future, and it was coming back. And it was a universal thing that everybody told me. And I started to really get a feeling of when you create the conditions for the hippocampus to grow back, what it feels like. And every year at Archangel, to evaluate how well they're doing, they ask their artists to complete a little piece of paper. And it has two shapes of a human body on. They say, fill the first one to show how you felt before you came here. The second one to show how you feel now you've been coming here. And I looked through a big pile of these, and it was very, very moving. I just want to show you one, which I think speaks for itself. So when I look at that picture, firstly, I get a sense of how powerful the work they do at Archangel is. Secondly, this is kind of what it feels like when your hippocampus is able to grow back again. Actually, a healthy, active imagination is kind of a manifestation of everything else in our life being healthy and in good balance. But thirdly, when I look at this, I think, if we are to achieve what the climate scientists tell us we have to do and make the changes that we have to make in a way that works, and we get to 2030, and we've got to where we need to get to, then these 9 years between now and then will have been an incredible time to live through. A time when anything felt possible. It will have felt like living through a revolution of the imagination. What does it feel like to live through a revolution of the imagination? I have no idea. But I imagine it would feel like this. So this is kind of the picture that gets me out of bed every morning, really, to do the work that I do. If we were to do it in the way that we could do it, it would feel like this. So in terms of practices, this is another practice called... how are we doing for time? Are we okay for time? Okay. Okay? Okay, well, I'm going to do another little exercise with you then, if I might, actually. So this is an exercise which... so you need to, in your pairs again, and we're going to do 3 little exercises, okay? So the first one is that you're going to take it in turns with your partner. The scenario is you're going to go on a picnic, okay? You're planning a picnic for this weekend, and the idea is that each of you take it in turns to make a suggestion of things you might take, things you might do when you're on your picnic, and the job of the other person is just to shut that idea down completely. All right? So they might be, yes, I'm going to bring some champagne. I hate champagne. Awful, disgusting shit. It's not. And then, okay, so you just take it in turns, making a suggestion, and then the other person's role is just to shut that down, and then take it in turns. Okay? So we'll do that for about, and then I'll put my hand up when we're finished. Okay, go. Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we're going to do that same thing again. Same scenario. You're going on a picnic. This time, you make suggestions, and the other person's role is to accept your invitation, but with no enthusiasm at all. No excitement. Oh, I suppose we have to. Okay, go. So the same thing again. Okay. Thank you. So, the last one, the idea is that again, you make a suggestion, but this time you're going to accept that idea and then build on it. This is yes and. You've done 2 yes buts. This one, they say, oh, yeah, we could bring some champagne. Yes. Yes, and while we're there, we could open the champagne and we could make something with it. Yes! And then, so you build off, you accept the other person's idea, and then you add to it, and add to it, and add to it. So, okay? Okay, go. Yes, and. Thank you. So how was that? It was a bit different. I feel they felt a bit different, didn't they? Yeah. And actually, yes, but those kind of yes, but responses is what we just encounter all the time. You know, as activists, as people who are sort of trying to suggest things, even within our own movements, actually, quite often. We could do this. Yeah, but we tried that before. Yes, but. You know, I did an interview on television in Luxembourg. I was interviewed by the leading political TV interviewer woman in Luxembourg, who normally interviews like big politician people. And she interviewed me for an hour. And whatever I said, her next question would start with, yes, but. So she'd go, da-da-da, and I'd go, da-da-da-da-da-da, and she'd go, da-da-da-da, and I'd have to go, da-da-da-da-da-da. And after an hour, I said, her last question, I said, I just want to point out, every question you've asked me has started with yes, but. And how different would this conversation have been if you started with yes, and? Like, I'm not a politician. You don't need to hold me to account for anything. We could have had a conversation where we built and took it to some interesting places. So if any of you ever study improvisation or theatre, you learn yes and it's such a brilliant tool that we don't use enough, I think, in activism. So this is another practice. So that's a really useful practice, bringing yes and into our activism. This is another practice that I love, which was developed in the transition movement, which would work great in this space. You need between 100 and 300 or 400 people. You start by doing that exercise we did at the beginning with the time machine, and then you think, well, what am I doing in that world? What's my role in that world? What do I see myself doing? And then you literally build that world with cardboard and string and sticky tape and pens, and you build this world as a kind of three-dimensional world that you then trade in and spend hours in. And to be with 300 adults lost in a play world that you've created is one of the most incredible things. And there's something very powerful about imagining different futures like that and then building them. So that's me in 2012. The first time we did it, I ended up with some people where we imagined a brewery and a bakery and a mill in the same building. I was like, well, if 2030 is worth fighting for at all, it's definitely going to have that in it. And then the next year in my town, we started a brewery called the New Lion Brewery. If you've ever come to the southwest of England, you must come. It's the best beer in the whole country. And then 2 years ago, we became the first 100% community-owned brewery in the country. We now have 270 owners in order to move the brewery into the same building as a bakery and a mill. And when people said, but Rob, how do you know that will work? I said, because I played it. I played it. Of course I know it's going to work. And I know many people who do that exercise and then have created what it was that they played. And our brewery is now thriving. We employ 12, 13 people, and it's fantastic. So another practice that's really important is the ability to ask really good what-if questions. Questions that start with what if. This is one of my favourites from Liège, where in 2014 I went there and Liège en Transition had this great question. They said, what if in a generation's time the majority of food eaten in Liège came from the land closest to Liège? They called it the Liège Food Belt. Fantastic. Then I went, and then they did a big event to launch this idea, and then I came home. I went back 4 years later. And in that time in Liège, they'd started 27 new cooperatives. They raised 5 million euros, not from the bank, from the people of Liège, investing in those co-ops. They had a farm, 2 vineyards, a brewery. They started the shop called Les Petits Producteurs, which after 6 months was doing so well, they opened a second. They now have 4. I met the mayor of Liège who said, we used to say we wanted to be a smart city. Now we want to be a transition city. This is the story of our city. Our role as a municipality is to remove all of the blockages to this spreading. This is now the vehicle through which the municipality are reimagining how the universities, the hospitals and the schools will buy their food, and this model is spreading to another 5 or 6 cities. But it's as deeply transformative. For me, it's deeply political. And actually, but what it's doing is it started with a really, really great what-if question. And a good what-if question should be like the bit in Alice in Wonderland, where she's really big. You know Alice in Wonderland? Yeah? Where she's really big, and she can see the door into the beautiful garden, but she can't get in. It should be that a what-if question is like looking into a different future, but making you really, really want to get there. And wanting to sets you to figure out how can I get small enough to get into that garden. So I've loved to see during COVID how many communities have been using what if as the tool for reimagining where we go next. This is a community who I did some talks for. I did a talk for, and for the 30 days before the talk, they posted a different what if question every day. And they were just beautiful. What if the bird song drowned out the sound of the traffic? What if car parks became play parks? What if lockdown's community spirit continued after COVID? What if there was a daily imagination lesson? And this was the last one that they posted. And I thought it was just beautiful. Because they didn't need all the what if writing anymore. People understood the idea. But actually that picture takes us beyond. We live in a capitalist, neoliberal economy, which is all about selling us short-term pleasure. Chocolate, shoes, handbags, whatever. Things that give us a little dopamine release, and then it fades away again. And when that's the foundation of a culture, you see an inevitable rise in addiction, you see a rise in depression, actually what this for me is about, and when you did your time travel, it's about a future that's based on contentment and happiness and community. And an image like this allows us to feel into it much more, I think. So, in London, in Camden, which is the part of London where Amy Winehouse came from, they were there, local government there was the first to declare a climate emergency and to do a citizens' assembly, a local citizens' assembly on climate. And then after that, they worked with the Transition Group and the Extinction Rebellion Group. They took this old cafe, they turned it into something called Think and Do, which is a kind of a community imagining space, where people would come together, think of what-if questions, and they were invited to tell stories from 2030. What would it be like? Tell us the stories. And then they gathered those stories together, and they created an edition of their local newspaper that was from 2030. The poet Rilke once said something like, "The future must enter into you a long time before it happens." Which is so beautiful, I'm going to say it again. The future must enter into a long time before it happens. How do we do politics? How do we do community activism in such a way that the future enters into people a long time before it happens? So the very last one I want to share with you, and then I'm done. The fourth bit of the sundial is pacts, which is a weird word to use, right, in relation to imagination. This is in Bologna, in Italy. In Bologna, the municipality noticed that there was a real decline of people being involved in local democracy, being involved in things. Less people were voting, less people were getting involved in stuff. So they created something called a civic imagination office. Not a civic participation office or a civic engagement office, a civic imagination office. They opened 6 laboratories around Bologna where they would run big events like this, big dreaming, imagination, community events. The really brilliant bit was that when people would come up with a good idea, the municipality would sit with them and say, "That's a good idea. Let's make it happen. We'll offer this, this, and this. You offer that and that. Good. Let's make a pact." In the last 5 years in Bologna, they've made 500 pacts, which range from really small things like making a garden on a street to really big, ambitious things like taking a building like this and turning it into a school to train young people as classical musicians. At a time when our imagination is kind of ignored and belittled and humiliated and pushed to one side, to have ways where we meet the imagination in the middle, we invite it and then we meet it, is fundamentally important to how we create a more imaginative world and a more imaginative society. So I love that story from Bologna. So that's what I wanted to share with you. It's the Imagination Sundial, and you can find it on my website. You can download a version of that where you can read all the tiny writing around the edge. So just to finish, I wanted to just mention the transition movement, which is something that I've been involved with for 12 or 13 years now, which is now started in my town, is now active in 50 countries around the world. There are many transition groups here in Belgium, and it's really a model where you start where you are. You're not waiting for anyone's permission. How do we start here to give people a taste of what that future could be like? How do we start building it? Whether it's small things like starting food gardens on your street or planting trees, whether it's more ambitious things like local currency or community energy projects, or really ambitious things like they're doing in Liège, they all matter because they give people a flavour of a different kind of a future. And so if you want to find out more, there's lots of resources and trainings that are here available in Belgium, and some good resources too. So it might be something that you might find useful. And thank you so much for not freezing to death here in front of me, which would have been very troubling. Thank you.
Right, so I suggest that maybe we take a small break so that we can actually, exercise a bit and get a bit of drinks. There is some soup, some tea. So have a break. Just one question. Allez, come on.
guess you were not imagining that the transition movement would be so huge and spread all over the world today. What was the seed that you chose to water and that grew like this beautiful garden that are the transition cities? How did you start? Like from imagination, I guess, but...
That's a really good question, and the honest answer is I really have no idea. You know, we just started in my town trying to figure out how we might do something like that. We didn't even call it transition at the beginning. It was just me and some people saying, what would it look like if there was a response to climate change that we just did here? We just started with what we had. And we were building up to doing a launch event in my town, and there was no book then, there was no organisation really, and we did this event and there were people there already from 7 or 8 other towns who had heard somehow about this and who came to this launch event and then went back to their towns and started doing it, and it just started to grow and grow and grow, and people would ring us up and say, how do you do it? And we'd say, we have no idea. We are just trying to figure it out. And the demand and the interest became so overwhelming that we had to start a separate organisation called Transition Network to support that and to provide materials, and now it's just, so now, so it's just kind of grown and grown really. So it's something where so my sense is the reason that it grew was firstly because it was in a time when people were, the only thing on offer was great big hairy men in America heading up into the mountains with 4 years worth of baked beans and toilet paper and guns. Really, like in terms of what do we do about these kind of crises, it was a very sort of survivalist kind of a response. And when we were saying, actually maybe the solution relies in us coming closer together rather than further apart, and maybe all of these different movements that we see around permaculture, urban gardening, community energy, maybe they're actually all part of something that is really historic and is the beginning of a new story for how things can move forward. I think it's a bit like with surfers, you have lots of surfers who are all sitting out in the sea on their board waiting for a good wave, and we just happened to stand up at the right time when the wave came. And I always remember I was invited to London by an organisation who rang me up and said, you are a social entrepreneur. And I said, oh, thank you very much. I've never heard that expression before. They said, we are business people who like to support people doing good things. So come to London and give a presentation about transition, and then if we like it, we'll support you. So I went to London, I gave this presentation, I finished, there was a very long silence, and this man said, so what you've done is create a very powerful brand, and then you've given it away for free to people all over the world, and you have no control over them at all. I said, yeah, that is exactly what we've done. He said, that's mad. But it works. That's why it works. Because there's so much trust in there. We've never had a transition group that has become a sort of neo-Nazi organisation. Or, actually, there is something in the DNA that people pick up where they can identify what transition is, but there's a huge freedom for them to translate it into their own setting. So we always say, it's free. There's no membership fee. All the resources are free. The one commitment is that you share your stories. So it's a kind of a movement of stories, really, of what people are doing. So, yeah, I love it, it's great. Yeah, if you're a control freak, organising a movement like transition is going to break your heart. But when you're able to trust it and let it go, it's continually delightful and fascinating and intriguing.
Thank you. I was really pleased to see in your presentation that there were actually pictures that looked very much like this too, when you were showing pictures of Barcelona. All of those stories that you shared inspired us as well, in the street, and Leen mentioned that in the introduction. We started this citizen garden in front of our garage door, and that was really nice. And then sadly one day it disappeared, and so we put signs everywhere in the neighborhood, nature, missing nature. And then the response of the neighborhood has been, oh yes, first we found it. It was in the waste disposal of the city, of the commune. And then actually, Julien, who is here, was actually planting like this massive potimarron, pumpkins there, and they kept on growing. They loved it there. And then Geert, right here, actually, like he helped us figure out that there was a way to save the garden. We went on a mission. And first, before the mission, all the neighbors came and brought some plants and flowers. So thank you very much again. That was amazing. And we see here Daphne and other people. So very quickly, a new garden kind of appeared, which was great. And then with Geert, we went on a mission and other neighbors to pick it up. So we found out that there was a way to, you cannot have a trailer for more than 24 hours on the street, but you can have a hand cart. So we turned that old trailer into a hand cart, and we walked through the city to bring it back right there at the other corner of the very same street. So that was just a great adventure and a lot of memories. So thank you, everyone. I also try to push it a bit further. And what if a car could actually be a table? Then maybe we could have nice dinners together. And then, of course, like we also did with Kathleen and many other neighbors, the play streets, which were all the time super amazing. And then here, like Bruno and Piotr, like they put like chess boards on Bienfaiteur. So it's really nice. We are really, really lucky to be in this neighborhood full of very active citizens. So thank you, everyone. And then, of course, there's the citizen corner right here, where there's a lot of different activities happening. You are all the time always welcome. And if you want to organize an activity, please join the community on citizencorner.brussels. So anyway, we need a new story, as Rob is telling us. And we've seen in Rob's presentation actually images that look a bit like that, right, of Barcelona in the future. And this is actually a genre that we call solar punk. This is what Wikipedia says. So it's a genre and art movement that envision how the future might look if humanity succeeded solving major contemporary challenges with emphasis on sustainability, problems such as climate change and pollution. And the thing that really I want to stress here is asking the question, what if tech was not all that bad? Right? Because we kind of live in a very polarized world where things are either black or white, right? So either tech is super bad or tech is gonna solve everything, right? But of course, it's none of them. Maybe there is a middle way, right? Maybe it can actually be useful. And I like this article by Phoebe Tickor. Actually, Rob just retweeted it recently. So the tech industry, social justice, and the environment industry often see themselves as quite separate and even at war with each other. Solarpunk is a very powerful cultural narrative that could really bring together efforts across these sectors in an aligned way. Because if we're gonna solve climate change, well, it's gonna take a lot of different solutions. It's gonna take all of us, and we all have a different piece of the puzzle to bring. So what if we could shape that new story and also own it together, because we all have something to contribute? And that's basically the question we are asking ourselves, and that we are starting to do this contest, an NFT contest for Brussels, if we've imagine.brussels. So what is this? What's the goal? So the first goal is to help us reimagine the streets of Brussels. You've seen beautiful examples with Rob's presentation, right, of streets in the UK. We need the same in Brussels, because we first need to be able to imagine right before making it happen. So that's the first goal of this contest. Invite all the artists in Brussels to just redraw your street, or redraw a street of Brussels. Oh yeah, because there's this guy that just told us that, yeah, the biggest crisis we have is a crisis of imagination. And then the goal number 2 is to teach local artists about NFTs so that we can all own a piece of the new story. Okay, so now you're asking me, like, what the heck are those NFTs? So NFTs are non-fungible tokens. That's it. Next. So this is not an NFT. This is not a pipe neither. Ceci n'est pas une pipe, ceci n'est pas un NFT. This is a picture, right? What an NFT is basically a certificate of authenticity. So you basically, it's exactly like if the artist would have drawn this, Margaret, would have said like, okay, this is the original, and you, Rob, are the owner of this new Margaret. But now, an NFT is a digital form of that. So in the old days, or actually still today, if you would have produced a piece, we would have to basically ship it to you so that you can own it, or if you want to have a certificate of authenticity, maybe you will have to go through a notary, and so on. Now, as an artist, I can just create a piece of art. Actually, now more and more, it's going to be a digital piece of art, like the one that you've shown in the presentation. It can be a GIF, right, an animation. And then, because it's digital, well, anyone can copy it, right? So who owns it? Can I still buy the piece from the artist? Because the artist also would love to sell the pieces he or she creates because the artist needs to live, right? They need to make money. And so basically, NFTs is a digital solution that enables all creators, whether they create paintings, digital animations, music, movies, videos, you name it, to basically create in a permissionless environment a certificate of authenticity that can travel through the internet from hands to hands. And because it's unique, it can have a value and people can actually pay for it. And that is something that is fairly new. It's enabled by the blockchains, because in order to be able to do that, we need to basically move the ownership of something into the hands of the person, not into the hands of a Facebook or any other privately owned property. And so that's exactly what those NFTs are. I want to show you a quick video of a new NFT platform that is about to come out in a couple of weeks that is really especially focused on doing good, and you will understand why.
We are standing at the forefront of an evolution of creativity, technology, community, finance, and social consciousness. Blockchain technology has paved the way for NFTs, which have ignited the democratization of the creative space. This new era in the digital world is now open, transparent, and unstoppable. Global creators, curators, and collectors can meet on their own terms together with their communities. Introducing Doing Good, an ecosystem aiming to become a public good that prioritizes humanity, social impact, and creativity. At Doing Good, a wide range of NFTs can be hosted by a diverse community, from music to videos, to photography, to fine arts, and even generative art. Doing Good is open to everyone. Anyone may list their own NFT release and can choose to list independently or can partner with galleries that feature curated collections. With each and every NFT sale, creators can stream money to social causes in a fully transparent manner. That means that each transaction on Doing Good connects creators, collectors, curators, and social causes to make the world a better place. Are you ready to make a difference and do good? Then join us and let's start doing good together.
So what it really is about is a way to share ownership on the internet. And with that, also a way to share the funding. Because we really need to fund a new generation of artists, right? because that's kind of been so far on the internet, artists have had a hard time because anyone can copy-paste what they create, right? And so artists don't earn that much money at all on platforms like Spotify and so on. And so if we really want to reignite imagination, we need artists more than ever, and we need new ways to fund them. And so by having now the ability to create certificates of authenticity, artists can now go directly, without any intermediaries, just using those different platforms, start sharing their pieces of art. And so that really can enable us, all of us together, to be basically the Médicis of the new Renaissance. But it's not going to be just one family. It's going to be all of us together. We're going to be able to crowdfund and finance all of those new artists. And so that's our goal number 2. Because if we can find a way to make being an artist sustainable, then it's really going to help all of us imagine a better future. And then if in the process, artists in Brussels can also learn about all of those new opportunities, it's also going to be really good for them. So that's the timeline that we have. So right now we are launching the call to artists. The goal is to make an exhibition here at the Citizen Corner for spring 2022, for the next Citizen Spring. Then people will be able to vote. There will be actually a jury. There will be prizes. We're going to offer some prizes to the participant. There is already those 3 people confirmed for being part of the jury. But then, of course, you are also going to be part of it, because every one of you will be able to vote, but also co-own, buy some part of all of those artistic pieces that you like. And so maybe one day, your kids will say oh, wow, mommy, daddy, you actually own a piece of that new Renaissance. How cool is that? So this is imagine.brussels. We really invite you to come and join us. We're also going to organize some talks, presentations in the different artistic schools. If you want to help us organize this, we're organizing this as a collective of citizens. So if you have contacts, if you can contribute one way or another, please join us. We also organize here at the Citizen Corner every first Wednesday of the month, Crypto Wednesday, to basically help citizens learn about all of those new technologies and how they can use them to organize those type of things. So that's what I have for you.